International Hot Rod Association presents Championship Drag Racing on ESPN Speed World. The NHRA, the world's largest motorsport sanctioning body, showcasing speeds in excess of 280 miles an hour and covering the quarter-mile distance in less than 5 seconds. Winston Championship Drag Racing from the NHRA. 16 times a year, the best drag racers in the world gather at racetracks throughout the United States and Canada in quest of a share of the $1 million payoff in the Winston Drag Racing Series. The last stop was at the Performance Corner Seafair Nationals at Seattle International Raceway, and performance was the name of the game. In Top Fuel, it was a double victory for Darrell Gwynn. He not only won the Top Fuel title in defeating Gene Snow, but also collected a new national record at 5.05 seconds, completing a perfect birthday weekend. Funny car elimination saw a resurgent Kenny Bernstein sweep through the field, beating Brad Tuttle in the final. As he had all day, Bernstein blitzed the quarter mile with a 5.35 second elapsed time. This was Kenny's second win of the year and moved him closer to a fourth consecutive Winston title. The third professional category, Pro Stock, was another case of the winner also rewriting the record book. Bob Glidden defeated Warren Johnson in the final with a 7.37 second elapsed time after gaining the record earlier with a 7.31 second time. The scene shifts to north central Minnesota in the 7th annual running of the Quaker State North Star Nationals. And as is in the case of every NHRA national event, the most coveted prizes of all are the Oscars presented to the winners. Hello, everybody. I'm Dave McClelland, and welcome to Brainerd International Raceway. This is the lineup of awards that will be presented to the event winners at the end of competition today. Over 400 racers from throughout the United States and Canada entered this event in quest of those coveted Oscars and a share of the $700,000 in prizes and awards. First round of racing is over. To bring you up to date on all that action, here's Steve Evans.
Dave, the big story in funny car competition is that Kenny Bernstein's machine is loaded up after just round number 1. Bernstein came here to Brainerd with great expectations of taking the points lead away from Mark Oswald, especially considering his big win 2 weeks ago in Seattle. But in round number 1, up against Dale Poldy, Kenny did his long, smoky burnout. He backed up. He did the dry burnout. Suddenly, a problem occurred. He could not get the machine into reverse. Dale Armstrong and crew rushed to his aid. The body came up and the hands flew. Somewhere in this melee, the car lurched forward, carrying the crew with it. Immediately after the incident, I traveled to this pit. Obviously, Kenny Bernstein's concern right now is not over the loss of a race, but the condition of his crew people, including crew chief Dale Armstrong. NHRA's emergency medical people tell us that the crew is okay. They're a little bit scraped and bruised. They're going to go into the hospital and be checked over, but there is no major injury. All of them are expected back at the track in a short time. Now, as scary as this all looked, we're happy to report that crew chief Dale Armstrong and crewman Jimmy Mail will be released from the hospital this afternoon and return to their hotel. And Jim and Dale, here's a little salve for your wounds. Mark Oswald also lost in the first round. He smoked the tires against Tom Hoover, so you've lost no ground in the points. But that does open the door for Don the Snake Perdome. If he could win this race at top speed and low ET, he could lead Brainerd the points leader. Funny car wasn't the only category that saw a lot of upsets. In round number 1 of Pro Stock, defending event champion Bruce Allen fell, as did Butch Leal. It's Bob Glidden who qualified number 1 that looks the favorite, continuing his super strong mid-season performance. In Top Fuel, round number 2 coming up, all eyes will be on a great battle between Darrell Gwynn, who is desperately trying to pass Joe Amato in the Winston points, and Gene Snow, who again has qualified number 1 here. But fans and racers alike better keep an eye out for the lady in the pink car. Shirley Muldowney was outstanding in round number 1, a 5:28 victory over Frank Hawley. Always a pleasure to talk to this lady when she and her pink car perform as well as they have here in round number 1 with a 5:28 elapsed time at 270 miles per hour. A great reaction time, just a good win. Congratulations.
Thank you, Steve. I did something right for a change.
This can be a tricky racetrack, but you mastered it just fine.
We've had good luck here before. I can't tell you we were optimistic qualifying. We were actually kind of trying to play catch up. I don't know what they did, but they did the right thing.
Indeed they did, and they're in a hurry to get back to the pits.
For Shirley, there's 3 more rounds of racing. If she can remain consistent in the 520s, she's definitely a threat. Here's Dennis Forcell, the oldest Top Fuel rookie on the NHRA circuit today, and what a story. At the NHRA Spring Nationals in June, Dennis Forcell had a medical problem. He suffered a circulatory difficulty in the months that ensued. He underwent treatment, rehabilitation, and now Dennis Forcell is back in competition for the first time here at the North Star Nationals, and in round number 2 is racing this man, Frank Bradley. Frank Bradley, home-based in Orange, California, sponsored by Earl Newman Agricultural Enterprises, has had his share of problems this season, but they have been mechanical. During the middle part of this year, he has exploded 3 engines, each of them valued at nearly $40,000 each. Dennis Forcell is returning to racing on his home track, hailing from nearby Minneapolis. Frank Bradley is hanging tough in competition, qualified in the number 15 spot. That earned him the right to race number 7, the reigning Winston champion, Dick LaHaye, in the first round. LaHaye, after winning the Winter Nationals, has had his problems this season, and they continued at Brainerd. Up in smoke off the starting line went Dick LaHaye. Frank Bradley pulled off the upset in round number 1 and moved to the second round of competition to square off with the Cable Value Network special of Dennis Forcell. Connie Coletta was the victim of Forcell in the first round of competition. The lane choice here went to Frank Bradley by virtue of his quicker elapsed time in round 1. In the far lane of the track, Bradley pulls ahead of Forcell at the start. But very close at the finish, Frank Bradley squeezes out another victory. 5.33 second elapsed time. His speed, 269 miles an hour, as we look again at the all-important start. The advantage actually went to Dennis Forcell, but he was quickly outpowered in the first 300 to 400 feet of the track. Bradley had pulled ahead by the halfway mark, and then it was just a matter of staying ahead of Dennis Forcell to move into the semifinals. That's the margin of victory for Frank Bradley.
Well, I tell you, it's awful nice to talk to an old friend, Frank Bradley, when his fortunes are indeed looking up. A 5:33, a nice run. Perfect.
Thank you.
See you in the next round.
Steve, now that's a man of few words. Frank lets his racing speak for him. Here on the starting line, backing up after his burnout, is Mike Brotherton, and he is trailing a wire that appears to be the connector devices that go to the sensors for the onboard recording computer. It should have no effect whatsoever on the performance of the race car, just a problem primarily for the crewman. Mike Brotherton can't even see it. It is behind the driver's cockpit. Brotherton is racing against Shirley Muldowney. The 3-time Winston champion is finding some performance this mid-season. She ran 5 teens recently in Seattle at the Seafair Nationals. Here at Brainerd, she's in the 520s. Mike Brotherton from Tulsa, Oklahoma, was the number 16 qualifier, the man on the bump spot. He upset Gary Ormsby in the first round, and now we see a crewman taking care of that errant wire as Shirley Muldowney, with her crew chief Ron Tobler looking on intently, inches her way to the starting line. Both drivers concentrating on getting the best start possible. And tire smoke for Mike Brotherton. Shirley corrals the car across the finish line and into the semifinals. She won't be thrilled with the performance of 5:39, but she did have problems keeping that car going straight. The 1988 NHRA Quaker State North Star Nationals is being brought to you by Goodyear Eagle Tires. Goodyear, because there really is a difference. And by Fram Bendix Autolite, which are all quality products of Allied Automotive. And by Budweiser, for all you do, this Bud's for you. More Top Fuel racing from Brainerd International Raceway coming up next. At the North Star Nationals, there's lots of work going on in John Force's pit area. Under the capable direction of crew chief Austin Coyle, the crew preparing the race car for the second round of racing in Funny Car Eliminator coming up in a few moments. Right now, we're back to round number 2 in Top Fuel Eliminator, and it is Joe Amato against Ray Stutz. Running a 5.20 in the first round of eliminations. That's the quickest time of the day thus far. Joe Amato earned the right to select the lane. He picked the lane the furthest from the camera. Jack Ostrander fell to the onslaught of Joe Amato in round number 1. Joe qualified in the number 2 spot with a 5.16. Racing against him now is Ray Stutz, the driver of the Gunite Express, who in round number 1 raced Eddie Hill. Hill had qualified in the number 6 spot and had to be considered the favorite against the number 14 qualified Ray Stutz. As we ride with Eddie Hill and look back, you see the car went up in smoke. Hill tried to recover, but Stutz was too far ahead and took the win. Our onboard camera showed you graphic evidence of what happens when those big tires lose traction. For Eddie Hill, it cost him that first round race and gave Ray Stutz the break to race against Joe Amato. I guess it could be considered a break when you think about Amato being the quickest car thus far in elimination. Stutz in the near lane. A good start. And Joe Amato easily outdistances Ray Stutz. A 5.18 second elapsed time. His speed over 273 miles an hour. And the TRW special of Joe Amato marches into the semifinals. This is Darrell Gwynn, the winner at Seattle, and the holder of the national record at 5.05 second elapsed time. He qualified here in the number 5 spot and has just watched Joe Amato run that 5.18 in that lane for low elapsed time of eliminations. Racing against Gwynn is the number 1 qualifier. This is Gene Snow from Fort Worth, Texas. Like Amato, Snow is on the cutting edge of Top Fuel technology, utilizing the direct drive total clutch management principle. Let's go to the far end. Steve is with Joe Amato.
Well, just when 5.30s and high 20s look good, a 5.18. Joe, low ET of the day.
Well, Steve, Tim Richards and the guys are doing an outstanding job. You know, hopefully we can just keep continuing on and win this race.
Okay, Joe Amato headed for the semis.
Amato paying tribute to his crew chief, Tim Richards. Back on the starting line, Darrell Gwynn testing the traction available on a second burnout. Gwynn generally runs well if he has no tire smoke on the dry burnout. Gwynn defeated Top Fuel newcomer Lordy Johns in round number 1, while Gene Snow defeated Earl Whiting in his first round race. While Snow's Amalie Oil Special had the number 1 qualifying spot at a 5.14, his performance in that first round faded just a bit to a 5.32. Meantime, the Budweiser Special of Gwynn ran a 5.23. That gave Gwynn the choice of lanes. Gene Snow having problems at the finish line. Darrell Gwynn stayed ahead and crossed first with a 5.25, 266-mile-an-hour charge. There's a happy young man as he heads into the semifinals. Gwynn's opponent in the final 4 of Top Fuel will be Frank Bradley, and that 5.25 consistent in the 5.20s. Darrell Gwynn has the lane choice. Joe Amato has the lane choice over Shirley Muldowney in the other pair of the Top Fuel semifinals. On the starting line, here comes Pro Stock Eliminator, round number 2. These cars, powered by 500 cubic inch gasoline-burning engines, start as an original factory-bodied race car, but they are very sophisticated machines and cover the quarter mile at over 185 miles an hour. Kenny Koretsky, qualified in the number 7 spot, beat Don Campanello in the first round, while Jerry Ekman defeated Butch Leal from his number 3 qualifying spot. Ekman in the Pennzoil Pontiac has the choice of lanes. He takes the lane furthest from the camera, while the Exxon Superflow Camaro of Kenny Koretsky slowly approaches the starting line to begin the staging procedure. Both cars will pull forward until the 2 lights on the top of the Christmas tree are both lit That indicates to the starter the drivers are ready for the activation of the Christmas tree. A close race. In by just about a half a car length. It is Jerry Ekman with a 7.55 second elapsed time. His speed over 183 miles an hour. Ekman moves into the semifinals. Similarly painted bright yellow, this is the team of Tom, Dick, and Harry, the Scribner brothers. Harry Scribner drives that Chevy Camaro. He is racing against Warren Johnson. Scribner qualified number 6 and defeated Mark Powick in the first round, while Warren Johnson was the number 2 qualifier, and in round number 1, he beat Joe Lapone Jr. The AC Delco Oldsmobile of Johnson, formerly a resident of Duluth, Minnesota, a suburb of Minneapolis, now hailing from Duluth, Georgia. Scribner out of Simi Valley, California. And it is Warren Johnson decisively defeating Scribner. A 7.47 second elapsed time, one of the quickest of eliminations. His speed over 184 miles an hour. In Shirley Muldowney's pit area, crew chief Ron Dobler getting the engine ready for the race against Joe Amato. Coming up at the Quaker State North Star Nationals. Back at the 7th annual Quaker State North Star Nationals at Brainerd International Raceway. We're in round number 2 of Pro Stock Eliminator, and this is Don Beverly. For 22 straight races, Beverly was unable to qualify, and then at the California Nationals, he was runner-up to Harry Scribner. Racing against him at the wheel of the A&B Automotive Chevrolet Beretta, this is Tony Christian, winner of the Mid-South Nationals down in Memphis, Tennessee earlier this season. Here in the first round, Tony Christian defeated Jeff Bailey. From his number 8 qualifying spot, Don Beverly defeated the number 16 qualifier, John Brumley. The incredible close competition that has developed in Pro Stock Eliminator over the last couple of years has forced all the drivers to improve on their driving, because races are routinely won or lost by virtue of the reaction time on the starting line. Beverly reacts first to the green light. Tony Christian drives by for the win. The elapsed time, a 7.49 second run, and Tony Christian had the power in the middle of the course to give him the win. You see there, Don Beverly reacted quicker to the green light. He left that starting line ahead of Tony Christian by about 0.04 of a second. Then, as they passed the midway point of the racetrack, it was all Tony Christian. He pulled up alongside of Don Beverly, pulled ahead of him, and when they crossed the finish line a 1/4 mile away, that was the margin of victory.
Well, everybody said this morning that to win in Pro Stock here at Brainerd, you'd have to be in the 740s. Tony Christian, you are 749.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Warren won a 747. I got him next round, but I can't lose with this on.
The secret weapon.
The Butch Leal.
Looking for a hole shot, obviously, is Tony Christian.
I'm driving bad.
Christian wearing his Butch Leal t-shirt, showing a great deal of respect for Leal's starting line driving ability. Here's the number 1 qualifier, the Motorcraft Thunderbird of Bob Glidden. We're going to be riding with Glidden in this round of competition. In the first round, he defeated Morris Johnson Jr. His opponent will be Kenny Delco, who upset the defending North Star champion, Bruce Allen, in the first round. Delco has had a season of peaks and valleys, the biggest valley coming when his own race car was destroyed in a towing accident, today driving a car of Carl Fisher. As Glidden sits behind the wheel of the Thunderbird, his right hand rests on the shifting mechanism of the planetary gearbox. No need to hit the clutch to change the gears in this car. He's off the starting line. There's the first gear change, the second, and the third. He's in high gear. And he's ahead across the finish line. Bob Glidden wins it. He slows the car with a parachute. 7.47 second is elapsed time. And Bob Glidden moves into the semifinals. Glidden will be racing Jerry Ekman And that 747 earned him the lane choice. The other pair in the semifinals, Tony Christian against Warren Johnson, with Johnson's Oldsmobile having the choice of lanes. This is Scott Coletta, and this is round number 2 of Funny Car Eliminator at the North Star Nationals. Coletta's competitor for this side-by-side challenge is Bruce Larson. A crowd of 40,000, the largest ever to view a drag race here at spacious Brainerd International Raceway, watching intently as Scott Coletta, who qualified in the number 8 spot, defeated Daryl Amberson in the first round. His competitor, Bruce Larson, beat Ed McCulloch in an upset in that first round of racing. A crewman making a final check of the instrumentation in the Sentry TAC engages Oldsmobile of Bruce Larson, while Scott Coletta is ready to go. Good start. Problems for Larson, and the Coletta Flying Services Oldsmobile wins it. Scott Coletta with a 5.67 advances to the semifinals. We'll be right back at the North Star Nationals. Going on the quickest race car in top fuel, the crewman with a wave to our cameras as he continues his work preparing Joe Amato's car for the race against Shirley Muldowney, coming up just a bit later. We're in round number 2 of Funny Car, and this is John Force completing his second burnout. Force qualified in the number 2 spot and defeated Brad Tuttle in the first round of racing. His competition, Eric Reed, defeated Tim Gross from his number 6 qualifying spot. But Eric Reed got to the staging lanes late after John Force's engine had already started, and Reed was told he cannot make the run. Eric out of the car, getting out of his driving suit and unstrapping his helmet, has got to be a disappointed man, but he was just too late as John Force is entering the staging process for his single run. Eric Reed had run well, a 5.50 in the first round, and John Force smokes the tires. As Eric looks on, he knows he would have stood a chance against Force and quite possibly could have advanced to the semifinals. But now it is up to John Force's crew chief, Austin Coyle, to figure out how to stop the loss of traction on the Oldsmobile. This is the Skull Bandit Pontiac of Don Prudhomme. 2 times winner thus far this season. He defeated Doc Holliday in round number 1, while Dale Baldy in round number 1 had a big break. The number 1 qualifier, Kenny Bernstein, as we saw earlier, went out of competition with this unfortunate incident. Kenny has released a statement that explains what happened. As he was attempting to get the car into reverse, his throttle foot slipped, hit the throttle, which in turn caused the car to lurch forward and knock the crewman to the ground. Kenny has accepted full responsibility for the incident and is thankful that the injuries were only very minor in a situation that could have been much more serious. The good news is that both crew chief Dale Armstrong and crewman Jim Mayle were taken to the hospital, checked over, released, and are back at Brainerd International Raceway as we continue in round number 2 racing. Don Prudhomme in the far lane. In the near lane, it's Dale Baldy at the wheel of the Chief Auto Parts Oldsmobile. And problems for Baldy. Prudhomme blisters the asphalt, a 5.46 second elapsed time, 262 miles an hour as Baldy coasts through out of power. Prudhomme advances to the semifinals. The Champion Auto Stores Pontiac. This is Tom Hoover. Side-by-side burnouts. The competition for Hoover, John Martin at the wheel of the Jam Air Special from San Dimas, California. Let's go to the far end of the track and Steve.
Don Prudhomme with the best elapsed time of the day for Funny Cars at 5:46.
Yeah, that's good, Steve. We just need to keep it up, you know.
Is that about what you had tuned it for?
Yeah, well, we're just trying to run consistent. You know, if we can keep it in the low 40s, mid 40s, you know, we stand a real shot at this thing.
With the number 1 qualifier, Kenny Bernstein, out of competition, and the number 3 qualifier, Mark Oswald, falling in the first round of this man, Tom Hoover. Prudhomme looks very strong. John Martin defeated Johnny West in the first round with a 5.50 second-elapsed time, serving notice that he can run those good times too. In fact, that's one of the best runs of his career. With the lane choice, Martin in the far lane. Hoover with the front wheels off the ground. Martin out close to the guardrail. And it is John Martin. His elapsed time, 5.53 seconds, 259 miles an hour. He goes into the semifinals. Racing against John Martin will be Don Prudhomme, the quickest car in eliminations. He has the choice of lanes. John Force takes on the young Scott Coletta, with Coletta having the lane choice. Top fuel action next at the Quaker State North Star National. At Brainerd International Raceway in the Quaker State North Star Nationals, I'm Dave McClelland along with Steve Evans, and it's time for the semifinals of Top Fuel Eliminator. This is 26-year-old Darrell Gwynn. Alongside of him will be a racer 20 years his senior. Here's Frank Bradley. Every racer at NHRA events has the utmost admiration and respect for a certain group of men and women, but they really don't want to see them in person. For that story and today's Quaker State Quick Fact, here's Steve Evans.
The men of NHRA's legendary Safety Safari are truly the guardian angels of drag racing competitors. Let's take a quick look at some of the tools of their trade. First, you have the Hurst Jaws of Life, and that pincer-like device will cut just about anything, including the chrome moly steel roll cage right off a dragster or a funny car. And under the sleeper on this emergency unit, you see this white tank? Well, that holds 250 gallons of light water. That's water with a little soap added so that it sticks to things instead of just sliding off. And now there's no pump to fill. They power the water with a nitrogen bottle here, and believe me, it comes out of here at great force. Now, also, there's fire extinguishers of various flavors depending on the fire. There's a seat belt cutter here. That's an interesting tool. It'll get it done in a matter of seconds. And all of the cleanup materials you might expect, including this very special rice hull ash for soaking up grease. And there's shovels, and there's jacks, and there's all the things they need for track cleanup. But most importantly, in some ways, is this right here. This is the helmet that goes on the man that wears the fire suit. In a bad situation, he'll go right into the blaze. Take a look at this footage from the Spring Nationals in Columbus, Ohio recently. There's a driver named Ron Dudley who will be the first to tell you he owes his life to the men of the Safety Safari.
And Steve, as a footnote, Ron Dudley is out of the hospital back home in Oklahoma undergoing rehabilitation. On the starting line here at Brainerd International Raceway, it will be Darrell Gwynn in the far lane of the track, Frank Bradley in the near lane. A wheels up start for Darrell Gwynn, and the supercharger drive belt comes off of Frank Bradley's car. Gwynn runs a 5.22 second elapsed time. That's an improvement over the previous round. He's getting better with every run. Here's Shirley Muldowney in the Performance Automotive Wholesale Special. The three-time Winston champion taking on the current points leader. This is Joe Amato. Joe has got the low elapsed time of eliminations, and as such has got a decided performance advantage over Shirley. Steve's at the far end.
Well, Frank Bradley came through here sans blower belt. Darrell Gwynn arrives here with a 5:22 elapsed time.
Well, we knew we'd have to step it up a little bit, Steve, like we talked one round earlier. One round at a time, and 2 races in a row we make it to the final. That speaks a lot for the entire Bud crew, and I got to take my hats off to every one of them.
That strategy obviously working as Darrell is continuing to improve his performance each round. In the far lane of the racetrack is Joe Amato. He had the lower elapsed time and chose the far lane of the track, but at least at this point, the racetrack appears to be equal for each lane. Shirley staging first. Joe Amato creep forward. Problems for Shirley, but look at the exhaust on Amato's car. He won the race and goes into the finals and will have lane choice by 100th of a second over Darrell Gwynn. But some rather strange exhaust out of the engine of Joe Amato. As As we look again, maybe we can determine what happened. There you see the puff of flame starting to come out of the side of the engine instead of out of the headers at the top. Surely going up in smoke and bouncing down the track is an exhaust header. That's what happened. The header blew off the car. The flames went straight out of the engine instead of up in the air, but it didn't matter as Amato won the race and the right to face Darrell Gwynn for the finals in Top Fuel Eliminator at the Quaker State North Star Nationals. You're once again riding with Bob Glidden at the Quaker State North Star Nationals as he prepares for his semifinal race against the Pontiac of Jerry Eckman. Glidden is the winningest driver in NHRA history with a total of 63 wins to his credit. The RPM comes up and Glidden pulls the gear shifting levers. And a big victory over Jerry Eckman. Bob Glidden is into the finals with a time of 7.43 seconds at 186 miles an hour. This looks deceptively simple. You're just sitting there with one hand on the steering wheel, the other hand pulling the levers. But you must realize you've got to have a good start. You have to keep the car going straight down the racetrack. And as we watch Bob Glidden once again, he pulled the lever to put the car in high gear at the halfway point. Then it's horsepower that kept him ahead of Jerry Eckman. His right hand to the roof, the parachute release to bring the car to a stop from 186 miles an hour.
Bob Glidden got out and said that had to be a little better. Boy, I'll tell you, you've got a feeling for these things. A 7:43 equals your best of the event.
We made a nice straight run then, Steve. We stayed in the tracks, and the car made a perfect run.
Straight is everything in this sport.
That's right. You get 6 inches out of the tracks, and you're in trouble. You're gonna wheel spin, and you're gonna more than likely lose.
And losing is something Bob Glidden certainly does not do very often. As we saw earlier, Tony Christian is wearing a t-shirt depicting Butch Leal. Tony is trying to use every psychological tool he can to gain a starting line advantage over Warren Johnson. It is a battle between a Chevrolet in the far lane and an Oldsmobile in the near lane, the true factory hot rods of professional drag racing. And Christian has the advantage. But here comes Johnson. Oh, what a close race by a matter of inches. Tony Christian into the finals. His time a 7.48 second elapsed time. Speed of 184 miles an hour. You know, maybe the t-shirt thing works. Look at Christian leave that starting line. He's got over 0.02 of a second head start at this point over Warren Johnson. Both cars at half-track are now in high gear and are settling down for the race to the finish line. And what a race it was. Literally, only inches separated the two cars. Tony Christian, the winner. He goes into the finals to race Bob Glidden, who has a decided performance advantage. Meanwhile, at the far end of the track, it is winner and loser congratulating and offering condolences. Cars remain in Funny Car Eliminator at the Quaker State North Star Nationals. The surprising Scott Coletta has the choice of lanes over John Force. Force lost traction in the previous round when he had the big break in the single when Eric Reed arrived too late to make the run. John Force smoked the tires and lost the choice of lanes. And it is Scott Coletta smoking the tires, and John Force goes into the finals. That makes his crew chief Austin Coyle a happy man as John Force runs a 5.45 second elapsed time, serving notice to the next pair of drivers that he's going to be tough. John Martin and Don Prudhomme side-by-side burnout. With his 2 wins and a runner-up finish thus far this season, Prudhomme is making a strong bid for another Winston championship. Steve's at the far end.
Well, as most of you know, nobody gets more pumped up over performance than John Force. John, I got a good one for you. 5:45, the quickest of the day by anybody.
I got a good one for you.
Okay.
And this is about Austin Coyle. I get so hyper in these interviews and stuff, and especially right before I race. That's where these stories come from, I guess. But Coyle and I are back in the trailer, and the last run you saw it smoked the tires, and I'm yelling at Coyle. She's smoking the tires. She's wheel standing. Put weight in the front. Put weight in the front. He goes out, and I had 10 different ideas, and he said, "You're not a tuner. Leave me alone. You're making me nervous." And I come out of the trailer. He says, "I put weight in the weight bar. You happy?" And I said, "Yeah, and while you're at it, make sure it'll still pass the scales." And Coyle looked at me and said, "Boy, you are nervous for her." She says, "If anything, she'll be heavier, not lighter."
John Force goes to the finals.
Steve, could you get him to repeat that? He lost me. Regardless, it's a winning combination, John Force and Austin Coyle. Don Prudhomme's had his share of winning combinations 37 times. He has been a winner at the wheel of a nitromethane burning race car. John Martin in the near lane. And Prudhomme has to shut off. Martin wins the race and goes into his first ever final round appearance. 5.53 second elapsed time. It'll be John Force having the lane choice, but John Martin doesn't care. He's just thrilled to be in the finals of the Quaker State North Star Nationals. If you like this kind of excitement, you can be a part of it at the new Houston Raceway Park, the inaugural Ram Super Nationals, October 6th through the 9th. That's Houston, Texas. We'll see you there. Steve?
It's a pleasure to talk to John Martin down here, Dave. He's going into his first ever final round. It's got to make you a very happy guy.
I can't even come up with any words. I'm so happy. My guys worked their butts off. But no, they worked very hard. I'm real proud of them. And yeah, like I say, I'm just really happy to be here.
And you go in with a competitive elapsed time, 5:53.
Yeah, it shook out there real hard. And my guy told me, he said, if it goes out there and starts to rattle, he said, just drive it by the seat of your pants. And I says, okay.
Rattle meaning shake?
Yeah, she shook pretty good.
Thanks, John. Good luck.
Thank you very much, guys.
The professional finals, next from the Quaker State North Star Nationals. Back at Brainerd International Raceway in the Quaker State North Star Nationals, Don Prudhomme has made his way back to the pit area, and Steve Evans is with him.
Don, obviously, all your fans are sorry to see you out. What happened?
Well, it was, you know, it blew a rear end. It's as simple as that. You know, it was on a real good run and blew the rear end out of it, tore the ring and pinion out.
What's it feel like when you're taking 3, 4 Gs and all of a sudden that acceleration just stops?
Well, that's it's about right. You know, you've got a little over 4 Gs on you at that point, and then it blows the rear end and everything stops. You just go limp. It's a sudden stop.
Just go forward in the belts.
Yes, you do. Yeah, you know, you're really pinned back in the seat, and all of a sudden it lets you go. And then when it does that, of course, the G meter just drops on the car, and of course your body feels it too. You know, but it was on a good run. I didn't see him. It got a good light and had a good 60-foot time. So, you know, it would have been a nice race for us.
Well, you made some points on the leaders.
Yes, we did. We just needed to go all the way to really feel more comfortable about it. But we'll get him at Indy.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Don Prudhomme already looking forward to the fabled U.S. Nationals coming up in just a couple of weeks at Indianapolis Raceway Park. Bob Glidden against Tony Christian, the classic Ford versus Chevrolet battle, the final in Pro Stock Eliminator. Both drivers taking their time about staging. Glidden's concentration pointed one way, to the Christmas tree. Buster waving Tony Christian forward. Glidden makes the move to high gear. A close race, and it's Tony Christian pulling it out. Tony Christian upsets Bob Glidden, 7.50 seconds. His speed 183 miles an hour. In another close race, Tony Christian has won the North Star Nationals. As we look again, you see a very slight advantage at the start by Christian. Just about 1/100th of a second was all the advantage he had. Bob Glidden at the middle of the track was right alongside, but was unable to pull ahead of the Chevrolet of Christian. And there you see it. That was the margin of victory for the upset of the day. A screaming Tony Christian showing the emotion of the moment as he wins his second race of the year. Steve?
Well, Dave, Tony Christian just came out of this Chevrolet like a caged gorilla. You had a 1/100th hole shot. You won a 50, he won a 49, theoretically a dead heat. Unbelievable.
Well, When was the last time you thumped the Ford? Have you thumped the Ford lately?
You had no idea you won till you saw us coming.
I didn't know I won. It was so close. I mean, we didn't know. I think we both shook the tires on the way down.
Well, I have a feeling it's Butch Leal who might start wearing Tony Christian T-shirts.
I might not change this thing. Thank you, everybody at Rear Morrison. Okay, they're the ones that did it for me.
And a lot of good driving on your part, my friend.
That's more them.
Brainerd Morrison, the engine builders for Tony Christian, the Pro Stock champion. As a result of this big win, Tony Christian moves into the #2 spot in the Winston points chase, a little over 1,000 points behind Bob Glidden with 5 races to go. John Force waiting for the finals of Funny Car, coming up next. There's 2 races remaining at the Quaker State North Star Nationals at Brainerd International Raceway, and this huge crowd is intently watching our Funny Car finalists. It is John Force in the near lane and John A. Martin in the far lane. A lot of work goes on between rounds on these race cars. Earlier, Steve had a chance to stop by the Martin pit area.
John Martin has a very talented young crew chief named Ron Swearingen. Now, for the past couple of years, Ron has been a roommate of John Force's crew chief, Austin Coyle. Now, Coyle, when he comes home from a hard day at the track or the shop, must talk in his sleep when he snoozes on the couch, because there's a lot of similarities between John Martin's car and the machine of John Force. I'm talking about the air brakes, the little dashboard with all the controls, and the computer timers. In fact, there's far too many similarities for it to be a total coincidence.
Well, Steve, as they say, all's fair in love, war, and drag racing. For John Martin, it's got to be a thrilling moment as he approaches the starting line for his first ever final round race. He's taking on John Force, who has got low elapsed time of eliminations set in the semifinals when he ran that brilliant 5:45. The 2 cars staging ever so carefully. And John Force with the advantage at the start. And John Martin loses a supercharger drive belt. John Force wins his 3rd national event title. His elapsed time, 5.50. His speed, 266 miles an hour. As we watch again, Force played the starting line lights to perfection. He had a big lead over John Martin, and then the mechanical problems set in for Martin. He lost the blower belt and the car slowed instantly. John Force pulled ahead and crossed the finish line the winner. Top Fuel Eliminator on the starting line finds Darrell Gwynn against Joe Amato. These are the top 2 cars in the points chase. Amato is in the #1 spot, while Gwynn has moved ahead as a result of this final round appearance over Eddie Hill to occupy #2. Let's go to the far end of the track and our Funny Car winner, who's with Steve.
John Force joins a very exclusive club of repeat winners this year. Only Kenny Bernstein and Don Perdome have done it. Congratulations, a great day of racing.
Well, we've come a long ways here, and me and old Coyle, as much as me and Gardella with Castro, we're always fighting together. Hi, buddy. But I got to tell you this, she ran consistent. The new things we were trying to do worked, and I'm really proud to be here with these guys. And I've been burning bridges all year, and I've been getting beat up, but it's starting to work, and I really do, sincerely. These guys don't get congratulated very much, but Coyle and this team, real good job, and I'm totally falling apart here. I want you to know this. They're going to have to carry me out.
Any worries at all that maybe that roommate situation might come back to haunt you, Ronnie Swearingen and Austin?
It's good. I went down to Swearingen, and I said, Swearingen, come down. My guy went down to help him glass their body. He said, Forrest, out of the ropes. I went back to Coyle. I said, that's it. Don't ever talk to him again, and raise his rent.
Okay, we're out of here.
John Force, never one to hide his emotions, bears it all for the world to see just by winning a simple drag race. Out in front of Joe Amato is his wife, Jerry. She performs 2 important roles, one backing Joe up after a burnout, the other Steve took a look at earlier.
Jerry Amato is preparing the final witch's brew of nitromethane and alcohol for her husband, Joe. And we have the hydrometer readings turned towards Jerry because crew chief Tim Richards is a little picky about the whole world knowing how much nitro they use. But really, Jerry, in most cases, it's just a splash of alcohol.
Right, a little bit, not much on this run anyway.
Now, there's more to this than just pouring fuel in the car. You use an air hose. Why do you do that? You put air into the tank?
No, just to mix the nitro and alcohol together.
Rather than stirring it around with a stick.
Right, like in the kitchen.
Right. Now, how much fuel will you put in this car for the final?
About 8 to 10 gallons.
How much will be left when the run is over?
About 2 or 3.
Ooh, and at $30 a gallon, that gets pretty expensive.
Really?
Thanks. Good luck to you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Steve.
As in the case of so many other race teams, a matter of shared responsibility to get the race car ready for the run. For these 2 points leaders, this is a rematch of a race earlier this year, the Cajun Nationals, where Darrell Gwynn defeated Joe Amato. A tremendous start. Oh, what a close race. Joe Amato wins it by just inches. His elapsed time of 5:18. His speed 267 miles an hour. And for the 3rd time this season, Joe Amato is a winner on the NHRA trail. As we look again, it was almost an identical start. The reaction time boiled down to just thousandths of a second. The advantage went to Amato. At the middle of the course, it was even. And that's the way it continued until the finish line, where Joe Amato, by a wheel length, pulled ahead. One of the closest top fuel races ever.
Well, Joe Amato, how close was it?
Too close. I don't know who won for sure, Steve. I thought I won, but it was that much. I mean, I was ahead of him down the track, and I kept saying, come on, baby, hang on, you can do it. And I was hoping nothing dumb happened, and it didn't, thank God.
Indeed, and in the points, that keeps you ahead.
Yeah, the points where we still have the lead. You know, it was good Eddie went out, but it's so tough. Boy, you get to the final, and the guy who's number 2 is right there. You know, it's hard to make any ground up.
You ran a 17 to his 18, just a few thousandths really separating the two of you.
Wow, it's exciting to win a race like that because, you know, that's what race is all about. You know, if the guy breaks or if you break, it's no fun for the winner or the loser. But my guys did an outstanding job. The car performed flawless this weekend. You know, Tim Richards, Jeff Rogers, Jim Walsh, all of them. They just did such a good job this weekend. And, you know, my wife mixed the nitro like a champ. And what more can I say? You know, it's exciting to win.
You use the word fun, and that's why you're here.
Oh, yeah, you know, who wants to be laying on the beach somewhere? I mean, how can you beat this? I mean, they're sitting in front of a television set. I mean, this is exciting. I mean, it doesn't get any better than this, that's for sure.
Okay, well, for all of you who are sitting in front of a television set, there is the winner of the Quaker State North Star Nationals.
Joe Amato, the 1984 Winston champion, is currently leading the points chase. He's just got a few hundred-point lead over Darrell Gwynn. Eddie Hill is in 3rd. Gene Snow in the number 4 spot. In funny car, it's even closer. Mark Oswald 1st, Kenny Bernstein 2nd, John Force is 3rd, and the hard-charging Don Prudhomme is in 4th. For Steve Evans, I'm Dave McClellan saying so long from Brainerd International Raceway. The 1988 NHRA Quaker State North Star Nationals has been brought to you by Fram Bendix Autolite, which are all quality products of Allied Automotive, and by Goodyear Eagle Tires. Goodyear, because there really is a difference. And by Quaker State Motor Oil. New Quaker State with QSX keeps engines cleaner to last longer. The NHRA North Star Nationals has been a presentation of Diamond P Sports.